Hello, welcome again to Myths on Books on World Mythology. Today we're going to talk about South American mythology. When you think of South America, you think of this great Andean civilization known as the Incas. They were the main empire in power when the Spaniards arrived in South America. The Incas spoke a language called Quechua, and to this day, they had their ancient capital in Cusco in modern day Peru. Today, the capital of Peru is Lima, and there are various sites, various things and museums you could see from the Incas. I've actually visited Peru and Bolivia many years ago. I was shown. Place. I believe it was. I think it was outside of Cusco, called Sacsayhuaman is one ancient site. But of course, when you think of the Incas, you think of Machu Picchu, the lost city of the Incas. No, it's not a city that went missing one day. It's just that the Spaniards never found it. And it was discovered many years later by accident, and it's definitely worth seeing. But there's another Andean civilization that existed long before the Incas, and it was known as the Tiahuanacan civilization. They still have an ancient site there in modern day Bolivia called Tiahuanacu, and the people there were known as the Aymar, and they spoke a language called Aymaran, whereas the Incas spoke Quechua. But of course, there are many cultures and civilizations in South America. People of the rainforest and others, and so to start off with, the first book I'm going to recommend is The Mythology of South America by John Bierhorst. I've mentioned this author before. He's truly great. In this book gives you a sweep of so many myths and legends from all over South America. He goes from culture to culture. He gives an overview of the basic myths. It's not long on the narrative because he has a lot of material to cover, but he really gives you a nice little intro to everything. He talks of the creator god Viracocha and Pachamama, who is kind of the great mother goddess figure of South America, the Incas, I believe in particular. So this book is a great introduction. Here's my little statue of Pachamama I picked up while I was there. People honor her today in statues that are kind of mixtures of a turtle, a snake, and I think there's a frog here somewhere. Oh, there we go, frog. And although older representations of Pachamama don't look like this, she looks more like just a regular woman. Tiwanaku is that ancient site that's in modern day Bolivia that represents the very ancient culture. The pre-Incan culture called the Tiwanakan culture. There's a very famous site called the Gateway of the Sun, and on it there's this god called the Staff God, because he's holding two what look like two staffs, and he's weeping. And a very mysterious god. A lot we don't know about him. Some people refer to him as the Incan creator god, Viracocha. We're not sure. He's definitely perhaps some sort of creator god to the Tiahuanacans. He's a very mysterious figure. We don't know why he's crying. Why is he holding staffs? Is he holding the universe together? Maybe. I actually have an ashtray. I know it's kind of kitschy, isn't it? It's an ashtray with a very poor representation of the Gateway of the Sun. One of the other monuments they have in Tiahuanaco. Here's a little image of the staff gods. Can't tell if he's crying in this thing. Anyway, so you learn all about Pachamama and Viracocha and the mysterious staff god, whether or not he's Viracocha in this really great book. Another book that is more focused on the Incas is this book. It's a wonderful book, wonderful series, The Legendary Past, and this is called Inca Myths. These books I've mentioned before, they're very short, but they're very very concise. They have a lot of information in them, and this is by Gary Urton. It's a little cute llama on the cover. Okay, so this book is really good. Now, one more book I want to talk about with the Incas and Peru in general is another book that, instead of being retellings, they actually have English translations of the narratives themselves. It's the actual fuller myths. Rather than just a little retelling. And this book is really wonderful. It's called Black Rainbow, Legends of the Incas and Myths of Ancient Peru. And this book is edited and translated by John Bierhorst, which is the author of the first book I showed you. I found this book very riveting. I found it had a certain primal energy and pathos. It tells one of the stories is, of course, the origins of civilization. At once people were wild and lived like animals, and sometimes in world mythology there's several myths that are civilizing myths. People are already here, but they didn't know how to live until finally there's these culture figures that were sent down from on high. In this case, there was a husband and wife, brother sister pair that came down from the heavens and landed on Lake Titicaca, and they wandered around and they came across Cusco before it was Cusco, and the people lived like, they were uncivilized, and they trained them how to live and how to grow crops and build things and have a culture and a civilization. There's another story in here that really touched me about a boy who marries a woman who belongs to the sky, and she manages to get away from him and live back up in the sky, and he befriends a condor who says to him, "Don't worry, I'll take you up to the sky, but you got to provide me with meat." And so the boy kills two llamas, kills two of these poor little llamas, and he gets them ready to feed the condor as they're flying. And every time the condor says meat, the boy has to give him meat. But he runs out of meat too soon, and the condor warned him, I'm gonna dump you off if you run out of meat. So the boy starts shaving pieces of his calves in order to feed the condor. This is actually a myth you hear in other cultures as well, the idea of flying on the back of a bird and running out of meat, and you wind up shaving your own muscles off and everything. Okay, so getting away from the Andean civilization and moving into the wilds of the Brazilian jungles, you have this great little book. It's a jaguar. Jaguar's really big and down there, and it's called Tales of the Rainforest. And it's by Mercedes Dorson and Jean Wilmot. Dorson and Wilmot. And there's some great little stories here. There's some... it's meant for younger readers, so younger readers can enjoy it. And it's got all these amazing illustrations. Let me try and find you one. Let's see. There's one in particular I really liked. Yeah, look at that. Wow. These are really nice illustrations. Let's see. Oh, here's another one. Another one. This is really great. One story that I remembered is the origin of people. Once there were these two sorcerers living on the earth. I don't know how they got there, but there were two sorcerers. And they find a hole in the ground, and there's all these people down there, and they have horns and fangs and sharp nails, and they take these poor starving people out of the earth, and they trim their nails and get rid of their horns and antlers and shave their teeth, and they become people. So there's all kinds of great stories in here. Now, one more book I want to focus on is there's a river in South America called the Orinoco River, and there's this culture that these cultures that speak a language called Soto, and they're actually separate cultures, but they share this language. Sometimes they're combinedly called the Soto, and they have a creation cycle. It's a very sophisticated little creation cycle. It's called Watunna, which means something like to tell. And it's an Orinoco creation cycle. And the translator is Marc de Shiro. And I found this to be a very beautiful book. It has it has many tales, and the stories to some extent can sit apart from each other, but there is a sort of a narrative that connects everything through. So so this is also from peoples of the rainforest around the Orinoco River. Here's 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 a shaman, which is a person who has the ability to send his soul out of his body and communicate with the animal spirits. Here's an example of a shaman sitting on his jaguar bench, because the jaguar is a really important image. I read this book years ago. I off the top of my head, I can't give you too many instances of it, but I remember reading it and thinking it was very riveting. I do remember that the creator god is somebody called Wanadi, and when the Europeans came, they tried to kill Wanadi, but they couldn't. So Wanadi is the important god, but the story is called Watunna. Okay, so that's all I have on South America, and until next time, happy reading.